Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ashana. Today we have Lottie Wynn, who is a psychic medium and Rahani healer. How are you doing, Lottie?
I'm
Before I,
doing well.
yeah,
How are
you have
you?
I'm not too bad, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I just wanted to start actually just by asking you a little bit about your background, just for the audience, really. How you got into doing what you do.
Yeah.
I know you've got an extensive list of sort of various sessions that you offer, but just we'll come back to that a bit later. So just a little bit background information
Yeah.
on how you got where you got and
Okay.
what
Amazing.
made you go down the psychic medium route or the psychic.
Um, so I'll start at the beginning. I was one of those classic people that tends to sort of have the story of having abilities when you're younger, but not fully understanding and appreciating or um, being in a space to fully encompass what they were. And so I did the classic thing of shutting them down. And that was at the younger age of sort of 9, 10, around about that age when I sort of fully shut them down. And as a result of that, I just sort of went on to the world and just thought I was going to have a fully normal life of just, 9 to 5 work, as you do, and thinking that was my path. But as a result of that, I had that sense of never fully fitting in and I couldn't really comprehend what it was. And so I had a lot of experiences from that where I would find myself not necessarily around the wrong people, but finding myself in the wrong environments or situations that didn't really serve me to the best of my ability. Um, and so one thing that led to another, and I'd found myself sort of doing a lot of work that didn't align with me. I've got a lot of background in working in customer service, a lot of background in working in retail and those kind of environments. So I love fashion. I love that sort of aspect of things, but the work itself did not fulfill me, and I couldn't comprehend why there was no um, almost elevation in those areas for me. I didn't understand why I wasn't fitting in or getting promotions. Um, and it sort of came to around about, well, it came to the pandemic actually, and I know a lot of people started to sort of really go within then. I'd already started leaning into sort of spiritual aspects of my path through a number of health ailments that happened in the years prior to that. But when it came to sort of the pandemic, I was really sort of pushed into that sort of space of inner reflection and sort of looking online, finding myself being more and more drawn to sort of the spiritual aspect of things. And what happened was that when we sort of fully returned back to work in the offices and being around people, I found that more and more debilitating, more and more uncomfortable. Um, and this part of myself, this spiritual part of myself, and it's almost like a reconnection to my abilities was starting to wake up. So when that was waking up, that other part was obviously starting to clear out and it wasn't serving me anymore. So there was a bit of a battle of ego for a period of time. Um, and as that sort of went on, my health started to diminish in respect of me being diagnosed with epilepsy. So the environments that I was working in not only weren't serving me, but they were more challenging for me to work in. So something was obviously telling me that you're meant to be on a different path. This is where you should be heading. Um, and so I started to lean into those parts of my gifts that were always there in the background. I just sort of shut them off. And I started to think, okay, I've spent enough time doing this in the background. I'm a Virgo, so typical hermit mode, doing it in the background, reading books, going online. And I'd gone for enough readings myself and had enough people say, this is sort of what I should be doing. And so it came to one reading that I had, and she said, you can't sort of learn this fully yourself. You can't just do it through reading books and looking online. You have to join some sort of circle. And so I started to reach out and I found a development circle, and it rapidly went from strength to strength. So that was a real driving force for me to be where I am. Like I said, it was a challenging sort of driving force because, whilst my spiritual path was flourishing, my 3D path was very rapidly falling apart. But in sort of retrospect, it was a huge acknowledgement that where I was going was where I was meant to be. It was like a silver lining for me. in that mindset. And so rapidly over the sort of last 2-3 years, I've moved away from the corporate world, moved away from that 9 to 5 perspective, and basically took a huge leap of faith into jumping into what I'm doing now. And really what helped me actually in some backwards way was my health pushing me to be doing what I'm doing. I couldn't work in those environments anymore. My health wasn't able to cope. And so I was forced into that corner, as it were, to make a decision. And that decision was to leave full-time work and to start up my own business. And that's got me where I am today.
So going back to the challenges, obviously with the 3D, and we say the 3D, it's kind of, it was the corporate world, wasn't it, that you were working in?
Yeah, so the remaining sort of positions that I was in just before I left was very much corporate. So I predominantly, like I said, I've done retail work in the background, so that's sort of face to face in shops, and then I've worked for e-commerce companies. But the company that I was working with before I made the sort of jump was a technology company, which is actually really funny because technology is not my best friend at the best of times. So it was interesting that I was working for a technology company. But what actually was the real thing that enabled me to take that leap of faith, had it been anything other than this, I wouldn't, was that the 2 remaining companies that I worked at weren't mindful and considerate of my disabilities. And as a result, it kind of led to a bigger part of myself that it wasn't just about me. And because of that, I couldn't be in alignment for being in those spaces, knowing that people with disabilities and health ailments should have as much sort of not respect, the respect is the wrong word, but they should have as much purpose working in those environments as anybody else. And as a result of that, I think that's what took me to not only have respect for the choices that I was making, but it really gave me the courage to do what I'm doing now. Yeah.
And is that based around sort of your health? When you say about the disabilities, I mean the things that you were sort of singled out for almost.
Yeah, in a way. It's something that I don't like to reflect on too much now because, as I say, it's kind of a bit of a silver lining. It's got me where I am. So I look at it and think, okay, those challenges were there for a reason. Like we all have lessons, and I know that they were my little lesson of courage. And it gave me the opportunity, really. So I see my disabilities as like a bit of a blessing in disguise now. And in fact, in some manner, they actually enable some of my gifts that I have. Yeah.
It's just to help the viewers more than anything, because obviously sometimes people feel, you know, they've got their own journey, and it just helps people to relate, that's all, you know, for their own sort of purpose and journey.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think, you know, if you're able to, but if you, it's fine. I mean, I know you've spoken before about sort of how, you know, doing what you do has helped your health as well. So that would be really good to kind of share that side, because
Yeah.
you know,
The way I sort of look at it with when it came to my health, a lot of my health throughout my life. So not only have I sort of been diagnosed with epilepsy, but there's also a part of me that has suffered for a long time with a diagnosis of anorexia, and that's from a very, very young age. And in some ways, that kind of aspect of me was really becoming quite debilitating in a lot of areas of my life because it was happening as a format for me to control the environment around me. And now that I've sort of moved forward through the work that I do and where I am, I look back and think I was controlling the environment around me because I was suppressing that major part of me that wanted to be, you know, out in the open. And since I've sort of leaned into what I'm doing now and kind of slotted that puzzle piece back in, whilst I still have the sort of diagnosis of epilepsy, whilst I still have the difficulties that I'm still working on healing when it comes to my diagnosis of anorexia, I have a lot more respect with how I treat myself in those areas. And this feels to me that it comes hand in hand with completely surrendering into being that authenticity of who I am by sort of coming out of that spiritual closet, as it were, and letting people know, you know, this is who I am. And this is a part of me that I've hidden for so many years, and I'm not going to do it anymore because my body can't handle it. this is what happens if I try and shut that off. My body goes into shutdown. And that's what really enabled me to say, you know, enough's enough. Let's be loud and proud about who I am. Yeah.
That's a really important part though, isn't it? It's about owning every aspect of yourself, and looking at you know, appreciating those those parts of you that you've been really frustrated about, and you know, giving it love. And so yeah, it's a big part, isn't it, I think, of a spiritual path, because unfortunately it's not an easy path. Any, you know, it's so I think that's really key, isn't it? So for people that are experiencing challenges out there, or any health problems, and get frustrated by it, I mean, I know you can relate to that, and I can relate to that. It's not a punishment, although some days it might feel like it. It's just a step in your evolution to move forward and to kind of persevere through it, and it does make you stronger, and it makes you be able to help others.
I look at my sort of issues and my ailments now as kind of like my ally. Because of them, it's where I am now. And I think it's because as well, I definitely resonate with the term empath. And so it's like I said, you know, when I saw other individuals having the same complaints as me health-wise, and seeing the injustice that can come from that, whether it's people with anorexia, whether it's people with, you know, epilepsy, whether it's any sort of health ailment that can sort of really sort of take hold of the whole part of your life, and you see them sort of from a perspective of having that miseducation in society where they get treated with injustice. It made me want to be that sort of something bigger, and that's almost like what pushed me into thinking, okay, it's not going to be an easy path for me to sort of go through these health issues, but at least I can try and be a bit of a guiding light for others who are, so that they know that they're capable of moving forward, that they don't have to sort of completely succumb to it. They can take hold of it, use that control in a better way of how I was using it before.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lottie, for sharing it. It just helps, as I say, reach, you know, more people, I think, you know, that are going through it, and that's kind of my sort of motivation for doing these sort of videos as well. So so talking about the psychic medium side, can you, for people that are just stepping into this for the first time, and they might not know, or they might be a bit scared about anything to do with psychic mediumship, can you just give a little bit of just a brief outline of what it is and what you do in that area, just to give people a bit of insight?
Good question. Okay. So ultimately, psychic mediumship, we all are to a level psychic and mediums. We're spirit, they're spirit. And so we all have the capacity and the ability to connect with them. Doesn't necessarily mean we all come here to do that, but we all have the capabilities of doing it. So myself, I sort of was psychically open from a very young age. And that means that I have the capacity to feel the environment around me, feel people's energy around me. So whether that's being able to read someone's emotions easily, feel their emotions, walk into a room and sense the atmosphere and know what's going on there, have sort of feelings about something that might go on to happen, that's sort of that psychic ability. When it comes to the mediumship aspect of things, that's me being able to connect and communicate with people that have passed over. Okay. But not only people that have passed over, it may well be individual spirit guides. There's also the capacity that I may sometimes connect with more higher frequency beings. So it could be sort of angelic energies or higher dimensional frequencies. But it's basically tapping into the unseen world around us, and expanding your level of consciousness to a space that we are able to connect and communicate with them. So that's pretty much what I want to do on a day-to-day basis, which is completely different to what I used to do, but I would not change it for the world. Yeah, and it's one of those things that I think people can have the comfort of knowing it's not scary. I used to think it was scary when I was growing up, and that's because I had that miseducation and lack of understanding of what I was experiencing. I think it's a lot easier now for people who are leaning into these aspects of their abilities, because it's a bit more open now. When I was sort of growing up, it was, we don't talk about that, we don't know what it is, it's just your imagination. And And so that fear aspect, when we sort of look at it from a perspective, I like to think of, how are you as a human being? Are you a good person? Do you go into the world and show and share love? Or you're going to take on that personality when you pass over. And as long as we're connecting and vibrating at a higher perspective, when we connect to a psychic mediumship aspect of things, we're always going to connect very much like attracts like, to higher dimensional energies of love. We're not going to connect to anything dark. That's something that, individuals might look into, but it's not part of my path.
No, it's good to mention that, because obviously there is a thing called discernment, isn't there? Can you talk a little bit about that and how you are able to discern, and just to give others again a bit of information on what you would feel would be good discernment?
Yeah, absolutely. We've all got it. It's our gut instinct. We all have that on our path. We'll have situations that come up to us, and we might sort of have, like, automatically, for example, we might meet somebody romantic in a romantic setting, and our ego is thinking, oh, I'd really love a partner. I'd really want to connect with this person. I'd love that to sort of work out. But our sort of gut instinct is saying, no, red flag, that's not going to work out. That's not going to take you in the right direction. And 9 times out of 10, we've all had experiences where we've sort of not listened to those gut instincts, but they sort of go on to play out and let us know that, okay, that's that discernment that we need to listen to. So it's tuning into that part of yourself that is already telling you what is right and what is wrong, what is in alignment with your heart and which isn't. And it's really exercising that sort of trust and leaning into that.
So would you say it's more of a feeling that you feel, for people that say are wanting to connect with spirit, if they were to feel
Yeah.
something nice or feel something not so nice, or
Yeah, absolutely. We all have that is that ability to sort of go within and think, more importantly, I would say is, when you're really connecting with spirit, look at the vibration you're initially sitting in. If you're going into a setting or a meditation and you're feeling depressed, you're feeling sort of low vibe, you're feeling a bit emotional, that is a place where you may be connecting to energies that might be lower vibe. And from that, we might experience connections that may feel more sinister. Doesn't necessarily mean they are, but it could be that we're just connecting with lower vibe frequencies. If we're sitting in a meditation setting and we're high vibe, we've listened to good music, our emotions are high, they're vibrant, they're at that sort of higher frequency, then we're automatically going to be connecting to those who have passed over, who are of the love quality. Okay. But it's almost more than anything is that feeling of, how does it make me feel when I come out of this? Whenever I come out of a mediumship session, there's just an overwhelming sense of peace and love that I get with connecting with a lot of loved ones. Even if the messages that come through that may be difficult, there's still an element of love because of the frequency I'm connecting to. Okay, so it's exercising that discernment. If there is a capacity that you are fearful in connecting, and are trying to do it on your own, I would say look into joining a circle, because they will always be able to guide you into knowing that sort of aspect of yourself more than anything.
yeah, thanks for explaining that, Lottie, because I think it is quite a you've just got to know, and it's good to learn through experience, isn't it? But and we can just be sort of suddenly feel different through the day, and we wonder why. And sometimes it's just because we're maybe attracting in an energy because we're not in the right space. So it's really just being aware of what's yours and what's not through practice, isn't it?
Exactly. It's finding that line, sitting in
Yeah,
that, getting to know what your energy feels like, because I think that's really important part of aspect of mediumship is, what does your energy, when it's on its own in a room and you're sitting there in peace and quiet and you've got no other distractions and you've completely disconnected from it, what does your energy feel like? And then you can sort of, I actually said it to a session with a client of mine yesterday who was trying to connect to his guides. And he said, how do I know what that feels like? How do I know they're around me? And I said, okay, well, get used to your own energy. And then when you're ready to connect with your guides, and you're in that high vibe space, ask them to step into your space. Okay, put that sort of intention out to connect with love and light frequencies. Ask them to step space and feel the difference in the atmosphere. And that's how you start to discern what different energies feel like. But you have to know your own first.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really vital for anyone sort of stepping into that work. So, can you talk a little bit more? You mentioned about the archangels and the ascended masters. You've been working with them, you know, for a little while now, and can you just sort of explain a little bit about, well, anything you can, really, anything you can share? Just
Yeah, absolutely. So I started to make a bit more of a connection. They showed up in a couple of my readings when I was doing mediumship. But then I decided to add an aspect of energy healing to the work that I do. And so I studied in Rouhani. So that's one of the things that I now offer within sort of my portfolio of work. And a lot of the energies that we work with within Rouhani are archangel energies and ascended masters. They are an interesting energy to work with. But they're so vibrant, and you can absolutely tell when you are in the space of working with that sort of frequency. Your energy becomes so much more elevated when they're in your space. And they can be a little bit more, not forceful, but more so forceful from a perspective of having a higher awareness of the world and how we work and how we operate. So when I work with them, it's almost like I step back and let them sort of take the lead and just sort of get directed to what I'm doing or what I'm saying or how I'm working. For example, if I'm doing Rouhani, sometimes I'll be channeling the energy myself, so challenging the frequencies of the archangels and the ascended masters. And sometimes I might get an ascended master come into my third eye and almost say, you know, step back, I'm going to sort of lean into sort of working in this area for you, or they direct me on how to sort of work on different things in the body, and they'll give me that guidance. So yeah, their energy is that sort of like, you'll know if you're working with it, because it very much takes you up to a whole different dimension and frequency that you'll feel absolutely like you're on cloud nine. It's a wonderful feeling.
yeah, thank you for explaining that, because I mean, we've all sort of like heard about angels and archangels and ascended masters, but again, it's sort of different. I want to say levels, but just different frequencies, and yeah, so it's really important. So regarding the Rouhani healing, how did you get into that, and can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that should have path would have been a couple of years ago now. I'd gone on a trip to Glastonbury and I saw an advertisement for Rouhani. Now, I'd always been drawn to wanting to do an aspect of energy healing, and I knew of Reiki, but part of me, not that I have anything against Reiki, I love Reiki, I've had it myself and it's a wonderful experience, but it just didn't resonate with what I wanted to offer as a healing modality. So I found Rouhani and it was sort of showed up my path, but it wasn't until the start of this year that I thought, do you know what, I'm actually going to train in it. And I was lucky enough to train with a lovely lady called Neshla Ave, who was the first woman to take over in terms of the lady who originally channeled it, Carol Ann Stacey. And she now teaches, so she does online teaching. So if anybody's sort of looking as to how to get into Rouhani, that's your lady. She's wonderful. She does online teaching, and so I did that, and I very quickly sort of fall in love with it. It's a very powerful healing modality, but it's very gentle, and it's really prominent right now for where we are in terms of the shifting consciousness, because it's a 5D healing modality. So it's bringing in the 5D frequencies, and it works predominantly through bringing those through the heart space to enable me to channel that to the client, to bring their body and being back into a balanced state of sort of equilibrium. And so from that perspective, that's what enables the healing to take place in the body.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And you do that across the board, don't you? You do it on animals as well, children, and yes, it can be done. And can you just talk a little bit, Lottie, just about more about how you would develop the psychic skills? Because I know we talked about what it is, but for people that want to maybe step into that, I know you said about joining a group, but can you talk a little bit more about other ways if you don't want to join a group, you want to do it from home,
Absolutely.
just
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So um I'll explain how I did it, because I think pretty much that's the best way to look into it. So before I joined a circle, and even when I was in a circle and continued doing that sort of development in the background, um, how I did it was I watched a huge amount of stuff on YouTube. I watched, this is when the penny dropped for me actually. I was watching a lot of like people on YouTube, psychic mediums, psychics giving readings, all of that sort of aspect of things. And the penny dropped and thought, oh, okay, I'm going to be doing this. And that's when I sort of leaned into it a little bit more with the development. But prior to that, I was just watching a lot of how it worked. How does it work? Trying to wrap in my head around that and getting used to it. And as I sort of start to lean into that awareness and understanding a little bit more, and this is actually where my epilepsy came into play, because I wanted to understand how my brain worked. And there was a correlation between epilepsy and channeling, and it actually sort of coming hand in hand and having sort of similar aspects of how an epileptic seizure might look like and how channeling looked. And so I was really fascinated by that. And I started to lean into thinking, okay, well, maybe this is my psychic abilities and my channeling abilities. And so I started to look at different ways of how I could sort of make good of having those experiences. TikTok's a really phenomenal way of just looking at different sort of mediums on there, and they'll do sort of little games that you can do, like little intuition tests. So they're really fun ones. So they might sort of show you like 4 cards, and they'll say, oh, which one do you think is going to have this on it? So they'll show you the back of the cards. And because at the end of the day, our psychic and our mediumship abilities, they're like a muscle. It's like when we want to go to the gym for the first time, it's always going to be that soreness, that aching, not knowing how it sort of works. But we're just reactivating those parts of ourselves that are there and just rebuilding that strength. And that's how I leaned into it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then you can sort of access it in any part of your day. And we all do it on a day-to-day basis. I guarantee you there's always that individual that thinks about someone and then their phone rings and it's that person ringing, or they'll walk into a room and they'll feel the atmosphere. That's your psychic ability is already active. You're just not aware of it at the time.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? Because we think of using the brain and sort of going into meditation and going into those higher states of awareness, but actually it's on, like you said, many levels. There's do you want to talk about are you sort of familiar with all the different clairs? Sentience, and just a little bit about that, because there are so many different aspects, isn't there, to psychic?
Yeah, absolutely. I started to do a little series of this on my socials. So the way I look at it, so the main one that the majority of people have heard of is clairvoyance. And translated, that means clear seeing. So that's the ability to see things without the physical eyes. And the way that I will actually describe this is something that the majority of people experience on a day-to-day basis, and that is dreaming. We don't dream with our physical eyes, we dream with our third eye. And so we're able to see visuals of things playing out in our sort of mind's eye. And that is exactly what clairvoyance is. I also liken it to, if you're reading a book and you're really, really good at sort of visualizing what's going on in the book. And that's another ability of clairvoyance, having that sort of third eye vision and just working on that and sort of leaning into that a little bit more. So guided meditations are really good at building that clairvoyant ability at that third eye vision. So that's one aspect. You've then got another one that is cognizance. And this is probably my strongest that I started out with, but one of the most infuriating, which is that clear knowing. Absolutely knowing something without a doubt and not having any tangible evidence. So it's a fun one, because it's almost like until the situation's unfolded, sometimes we don't have that sort of prominent proof that what we were feeling was accurate. But again, it's that gut instinct, absolutely knowing with any sort of doubt, I know that this situation is going to go this way. I don't know how, but it is. And that is that sort of just utter knowing of something. Okay. It might also sort of play out as like I just know without a doubt that my friend is going to have a baby and it's going to be a boy. I don't know how I know that, but I know it. It's that sort of feeling. You've then got clair sentience, which is clear feeling. And this is what a lot of empaths experience. It's that feeling emotions that aren't yours, or feeling environments around you so strongly. Okay, it's that real clear feeling around something. Meeting a friend for, you know, a cup of coffee, and without them even saying a word, you can tell exactly what they're going through. You can feel it with that in every sort of ounce of your body. Okay, so that's that clear feeling, that clear sentience. You've then got Claire. I'm still want to work on which ones. I don't know. Claire Aliens. And Claire Aliens is that, if I think off the top of my head, if you can think what it is, Aliens. I'm pretty sure Claire Aliens is the clear tasting or clear.
I'm not sure of that one. Nikki Allen's probably the best one to know with that one. But yeah, I'm not sure of that one. That was quite a new one that I come across recently, but
I always get these two mixed up. I had to look it up. So that's clear smelling. Okay. So clear smelling, for example, is, and this can come up in mediumship a little bit. Okay. And other people will experience it if they've had a visitation from a loved one, and they'll think to themselves, oh my goodness, I can smell my grandmother's perfume, but there's nobody around me. There's nothing there. And it's that using of your, almost like that non-physical part of your senses, that smelling ability to sense spirit through smell. Okay. And then you've got another one that is clairgustance, which is clear tasting. And this is a really fun one, because sometimes I'll have mediumship sessions and I'll just be bringing through sort of some, like a grandfather or a grandmother, and then I'll have just a strong taste of a drink or a cake or like a roast dinner or something like that. And I'll relay that to sort of the individual, and they'll say, oh yeah, you know, my grandmother, she was a great cook, and this is what she would cook, and those would be sort of the happy memories that they would share. So that's that ability of clairgustance. Okay, so these are the ones that you say that they're like the less known ones. Not everybody sort of tends to have those, and there are a few others that I'm trying to think of. Clairaudience.
Yeah, clairaudience.
Okay, clairaudience. Again, this is another one that a lot of people will probably already be experiencing in their day-to-day lives, and that's that ability of clear hearing. Okay. And this is hearing it comes in a couple of ways. It can either come as an external sound, but more often than not, it will come internally. Okay. And sometimes that will be, more often than not, we find that we get a lot of that coming from our spirit guides and our spirit team. And this is the fun sort of lesson in discernment that we were talking about earlier, is sometimes when that happens, it can come in our own voice. And so sometimes we think it's just a thought of our own, and it's having that ability to discern whether it's your thought or actually it's coming from a past loved one or spirit guides. That's a fun one to sort of wrap your head around. But it's like we were saying earlier, it's getting into that space of, what does my thoughts and feelings sound like? What do I feel like at a baseline? How can I discern whether it's me or whether it's my spirit guides or my loved ones? Okay. And sometimes it can also come through as well if you're suddenly, for example, in the shower, and you suddenly have a song playing in your head and it comes out of nowhere, and you think, why did I have that song playing in my head? And there will be some sort of relevance to it. It could be, again, that song's lyrics are significant to what you're going through at the time. Or it could be connected to, again, a loved one who's trying to come through, and that was their favourite song. And so that's a really fun one. But it is, again, like you said earlier, that exercising discernment of feeling around where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I guess would light language come into that as well, where you're more discerning and you're bringing through that voice?
Okay.
Or would it be...
Really good question. Yeah, I don't know if light language would come through in respect to the clairs, because I think that's more in some sort of way another aspect of channeling.
like trance, but more
in some capacity. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't look into light language myself at this moment, so I wouldn't be able to answer that. I'd like to answer it, but I probably wouldn't do it justice in doing so.
No, that's all right, Lottie. No, I was just curious then, because that just came to me, and I just thought, I wonder how that fits in, because like when you said, I mean, I've had examples before where I've said something and I thought, oh, where did that come from? And it's really profound, and you think, oh,
yeah,
and it's
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I know what you know. Yeah, so that would be like an essence of like channeling in that respect. So we probably all had it as well, like you just said, that we'll have a conversation with a loved one, or a friend is sort of coming to us and saying, I'm going through this situation, and you suddenly come through with the most profound, wise advice, and you think, I don't know where that came from. And usually it is a natural ability within channeling that we've got to not only connect to sort of like other levels of spirit, but it could be that we're connecting to our higher self. And that is the guidance that the higher self is channeling through. So that's definitely a perspective of channeling. Yeah.
yeah. And could you just briefly just touch on trance as well? Because I know that's another, again, something you're interested in at the moment.
Yes. So aside from the work that I do day to day, I am developing at the moment in another modality of mediumship, which is trance mediumship. And trance is, for me, it's actually one of the most phenomenal parts of what I'm developing at the moment, because it's really given me that opportunity to trust and take my hands off the steering wheel, which has been one of my main issues in life. But with trance mediumship, what we're doing is we're taking ourselves into that space of deeper trance and separating or stepping back our consciousness to allow our guides or for spirit to step forward into our space and start using our energy body to communicate with the world. Okay. And so how that looks, it's really phenomenal actually, is during a session of development, I will go into a space of trance meditation, and I almost like allow my consciousness to sort of take a bystanding point of view. So I'm there, I'm still within my body, I can take control of it at any time. We always work with our guides predominantly in the sort of development sessions, and my guides will step into my energy and then will use my, as I said, my energy body to manipulate it so that they can express themselves through me. So we may get something called transfiguration, which is them sort of imposing their face and their features on my body. We may also get a manipulation of our vocal cords so that they can use their voice through ours, so they can speak. One person who's really, really phenomenal, and she's worth watching so you can really get a grasp of what trance mediumship is a lady called Elaine Thorpe. She's a British lady, and she is absolutely phenomenal. She connects to her guide, Jonathan, and she really fully encompasses what trance mediumship is and what it can be. So for anybody who's sort of interested in knowing a little bit more about it, look into her.
Yeah, thanks, Lottie. Just as you were talking, I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's quite amazing how spirit works. As you were talking about trance, your face was almost, I'd be interested to see if this actually comes out in the recording, but it was almost like, again, phasing, just buzzing around a little bit, phasing in and out. And while you were talking, it highlighted my, as though I was talking, and I looked at it and I thought, there's no noise this end. Why is it highlighting me? And then it went back to you again. It was almost like spirit were kind of again playing with the frequencies, because they do that, don't they?
Be interested to see if you've caught anything, any
Yeah,
TV
there's been a lot of sort of a bit of light phenomena, but I don't know if that's just the camera or my logic. I like to sort of rule things out first, because I've got the auto light adjust on this end, so it kind of sometimes looks a bit light and sometimes looks a bit darker. But for you, yes, I definitely did sort of phase in and out a bit, so that's interesting.
I absolutely love it. During my sessions, like I think it was this week or last week, I've had so much phenomena happen during sessions where I've had people, because I work predominantly online, and so throughout one session, I kept getting on his end stickers being sent almost on the team session. So I kept getting sort of balloons sort of coming up, filtering, and you could see that he was just sat there, like with his hands in the air, not doing anything. And they were just sort of, and it was almost in response to what I was saying to him in terms of the guidance that he was receiving, that they were showing like celebrations or confirmation of the information coming through. It was just incredible. Yeah.
That's really fascinating, because I saw that on somebody else's a couple of years ago. Somebody was a famous tarot reader, psychic, and they kept having balloons coming up as well, and they weren't doing anything, and it was almost like one of the, yes, so they were playing with the
Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's that tangible, like you said, because it is best to rule things out. But when you have that sort of more tangible aspect of it, then you think, well, you can't make that up. There's something more to it going on there. Yeah.
Well, we definitely had, this is our second attempt, isn't it, at a video, and we definitely had in the first session some interference.
Yeah,
And then, yeah,
definitely.
I think we gave up and thought, let's pick another day. So, but going back to sort of what you use every day as a daily tool, what would you swear by that you can't be without?
Ooh.
It doesn't have to be just one thing, it could be several, but
No, this is there is a couple, but so more than anything, I would say that when you're doing this work, um, is to make sure that you are grounding yourself enough, especially when you're working with the higher frequencies. It's very easy to sort of get quite depleted if we're not sort of grounding ourselves enough when we're working with different sort of energy levels and we're sort of consistently coming up and down. So there is absolutely that. It's always making sure that you're working when your body's in a space that it's well. I find that when it's not working as much from that sort of higher frequency, it's more difficult to connect. It makes it more challenging. So it's much easier to be in a flow state when we're working from a high vibration and we're feeling well and good in our body. So it's making sure to nourish your body, to give it the rest that it needs, to fuel it in the way that it needs to be. But the main thing that I would say is the biggest part of my work that I do is having blind faith. Without that and having that sort of trust in spirit and trust in the connections and the work that I do, I wouldn't be able to do it. That is the
yeah,
driving thing.
that's very vital, isn't it? I find that very difficult some days. It's not easy to do that, especially when you have challenging days. But
Absolutely.
it's like a goal to aim for, isn't it, for people? Because I suppose the more you see the benefits, the more you see, and you have the good days, the more you feel more empowered to kind of keep going.
Absolutely. And do you know what? Like working with spirit, and it's actually them that's given me the position to have that blind faith and that trust and lean into that, because the more that you connect with them through readings and the information that they bring forward, or how the readings come together on some days, is just phenomenal. You think there's no way that that could have happened without some sort of higher power connecting it to make it possible. That puts you in a position to have more faith in something other than ourselves, and just knowing that, whilst we are here having this sort of human experience, there is something that is taking care of our path and watching over us and directing it, you know?
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share, Lottie, before we sort of talk about what sessions you offer and things like that? Is there any
Um,
other bit of advice you'd like to give people?
I think, if you are finding yourself in a position that I was, and you have an instinct or a feeling within your heart that there is something bigger for you, and that that would bring you the joy and it would enable you to be not only a better version of yourself for you, but for others, then lean into that. Because from my perspective, yes, we have this individual life and we have other experiences, but from my perspective, with working with spirit, life is so short to not enjoy it.
That's very wise words, very wise words. And something we need to hear every day, I think, because it's so true. It's so, so true. It's very hard to put into practice some days, but it's so, so true. So thank you. Lottie, so you do online sort of sessions, don't you, for one-to-ones? What do you offer? I know you do the Rahani healing, you do the psychic intuitive side. So what sort of sessions do you offer? So in case anybody would like to check you out.
A whole mixture of things. So I do psychic readings online as well as psychic mediumship readings online. I also offer the same through phone if people don't have access, or some people don't like sort of jumping online and speaking face to face. They like to be sort of behind closed doors, and that's understandable. I also offer some parts of my readings through email, if that's an easier sort of aspect of things for people. I offer tarot readings via email. And then when we're looking at sort of development, I actually sort of offer spiritual guidance and coaching. So that's for people who are either developing in their own abilities, or it's people who are on their spiritual path and they are feeling a little bit lost, because when we're on this path, that is one of the major things. We feel like we're completely alone. And so I'm offer tailored sort of made services that sort of find where you're at that level of your path and work with my intuition and any sort of spirit guides or energies that want to come forward to help you navigate it a little bit more easily, because it is so challenging at times. And then with my Rahani, I offer that online, but then I also offer distance for people, again, who don't have that access online. And so that's for adults, it's for children, and it's for animals as well.
Thank you. And Lottie, do you have any events coming up? You know, any workshops, any shows you're going to, any events?
Well, I haven't got any workshops in mind, but I will be at the Mind Body Spirit Festival in Birmingham in November. So next month, probably this time next month, actually. Yeah.
Okay, and is that on your website or on your social media? How do people find that out?
No, so this isn't actually, this is just something that I'll be attending more than anything, just to be around wonderful, like-minded people. So I would say just look on, anybody who's interested in that event, have a look on Google, just search Mind, Body, Spirit, Birmingham NEC, and that's how they'll find it. I believe there's still some tickets available.
Brilliant. And how do people contact you? What's the best way they can get hold of you?
Perfect. So you can find me on my website, which is www.lottiewinpsychicmedium.co.uk, or you can find me on Facebook under my name, or you can find me on Instagram on lottiewin.1111, or I'm also on TikTok, and you can find me again on there under my name.
That's lovely. Thanks, Lottie. And for anyone that's watching, thank you so much, Lottie, for your time today. And sorry it's taken 2 sessions to get where we are.
Everything happens for a reason.
Oh, I know, but I do appreciate your time. And can I just sort of say to everybody, you know, I wouldn't be on this path. Probably, maybe I would eventually, I don't know, but not as quickly if it wasn't for Lottie. Who gave me a gentle nudge in the right direction, and I'm still on that path and journey, but I'm so grateful to Lottie, and she does know it. So thank you all for watching. If you'd like to get hold of Lottie, I'll put the link to our website in the description below.